Hi everyone, it's Tim here. So a few weeks ago when Kat and I were recording our August monthly news update, I mentioned that I'd electrified all of our towel rails because obviously we don't have heating in our towel rails anymore now that we've got rid of our gas supply, and we've got an air-to-air heating system, so it doesn't do our hot water or runs any radiators or anything. And so I mentioned that I'd done the electrification of the towel rails just in passing, and I said, well, I wasn't planning on doing a video, but if anyone's interested, let me know. And I had an overwhelming response saying, yes, please do show us how you electrified your towel rail. So this is going to be that video. It's going to be split into two parts. The first part is just the basics, showing you approximately what I've done. And then in the second part, I'm going to go into all the nitty gritty of all the DIY type stuff that I did, drilling through the tiles and all that other very messy stuff. So that bit's going to be the longer part, but if you're only interested in the basics, just stick around for the first part, and then if you want all the gory details, stick around for the full video. So yeah, let's get on with it. So we have three towel rails that I needed to electrify. We got this one here in our ensuite, we got one in the second bedroom ensuite, and also the final one in the family bathroom. So what I needed to do was basically find a solution that would heat these towel rails and allow me to control them, ideally using my phone. And what I ended up doing in the end was just getting a very basic immersion insert for the towel rail. So that's this thing here, and it actually is a sort of metal rod that goes up, inserts into this vertical part of the towel rail. There are fancier ones of these that will allow you to control things using an app and stuff, but what I ended up doing was going for a very basic one and then hooking it up to a smart plug, which is plugged in into a socket in the other room through this wall here. So what I've done is I've drilled through the tiles here into the bedroom, which is the other side of this wall, and then run the cable, basically I'll show you, all the way through into this built-in wardrobe here. So this is our built-in wardrobe, and the cable runs all the way along through there, and I've plugged it in here basically, which is a socket that the developers put in for people to put TVs in here, but honestly I don't know why you'd bother putting a TV inside your fitted wardrobe. So I thought, well, I'll make use of this plug by putting a smart plug in. So I've just gone for a GivEnergy smart plug, so I can control it through the app, and that means I can set up timers, schedules and all that, and also monitor the energy usage. So one slight complication of this is that this cable run is very long. It's about 3 meters, something like that. You can see we've got extremely large built-in wardrobes, and that means that the cable that came with the immersion heater was only about 1 meter and a bit long, which meant I had to extend it using a bit of extra cabling and a connector. So I'll show you that in the detailed part of the video later on. But yeah, that's the basics of the one that we've done for our ensuite, and I'll show you the second ensuite now. So the towel rail in the second ensuite is a little bit smaller than the first one, which meant we could go for a sort of slightly lower powered insert. So the one in the main ensuite is 400 watts, and this one here is actually 300 watts. So it's exactly the same, just a slightly lower power rating. I'll put a link to where I got these from in the description, so take a look there if you're interested. The main complication here is that obviously there's only a limited space between the bottom of the towel rail and the floor. So what I tried to do was find the shortest one I could, and it turned out it was about 3 or 4 centimeters longer than this gap. However, what I was able to do was actually insert it diagonally and then gradually straighten it up as I pushed it in, which meant I didn't have to take the towel rail off the wall, which was very, very helpful. Obviously what I had to do before doing all of that was disconnect the pipes and drain all the water out. So prior to doing all of this, I had actually drained down the central heating system, and what I've done is I've just capped off the pipes that come into the radiator there. You can see they're not doing anything now. I'm leaving them there just because it's easier to leave them than to cut them right back or whatever, because you never know, might need to replace those at some point in the future. It might be a decade from now, but they're not doing any harm, so I'll just leave them where they are. The other complication I had with this particular towel rail is, if I just show you very quickly the other side of the wall where the fitted wardrobe is, you can see that the wardrobe obviously is up against the back wall of the room, but the towel rail is actually just the other side of this wall here, which meant that if I was to do the same as I did in the old suite, I would have to run the cable all the way into this corner and drill through the tiles there. Now there's a couple of problems with that. Firstly, it would look really untidy, I think, because the cable would have to run all the way along the wall, and I think that would look dreadful. And I would much prefer it to be basically underneath the towel rail, so that it's a little bit neater and hidden away when there's towels on the radiator. The other problem is, of course, that there's no way I'd be able to drill through that tile there with the toilet in the way. So what I ended up doing was I thought, well, if I get the height just right, I'll be able to drill through the wall and pop out just above the skirting board. So what I did was I measured the height, and I tried to drill through as accurately as I could, so that I could then basically put a piece of trunking over where that cable comes through, and then it just basically runs along the top of the skirting board through that trunking and into the fitted wardrobes in much the same way as I did with the one in our ensuite. I've shown people this, and most people don't even realise there's some trunking here. It's there if you look closely, of course, but I think that was a reasonably good solution. The main complication from doing that, of course, though, is that I had to drill through the tiles in 3 places. One for the actual, the cable runs through the centre there, and then of course 2 other, just knocked my elbow on the door frame, and the 2 other places here and here where I needed to put raw plugs into the wall, so that I could screw this plate onto the wall there. And the reason that's very annoying is because rather than what I did with the R ensuite was I was able to drill through the grouting, which is significantly easier than drilling through tiles, let me tell you. Right, so that's the second ensuite done, and let's go on to the final one, which is the family bathroom. So this is the family bathroom, much the same as the other 2. This one again is a 300 watt immersion insert, and this one, very fortunately, I was able to drill through the grout in all 3 places. So what I've done is I've tried to line it up with the grout in the corner of these 4 tiles here, so I was able to go right through the centre there, which made it significantly easier than the one in the second ensuite, and of course these 2 holes as well. I could just drill straight through the grout, so that made life a little bit easier. So this cable actually runs through into our bedroom, and it pops out just behind our bed. But I'm not going to show you that because you haven't even bought me dinner yet. Kat's also recording a video today. You can see we've got a very professional setup going on. She knows what she's doing. Right, so that's the end of the first part of the video. Now on to the DIY section. So if you're not interested in this, then feel free to stop watching now. But for those of you who want to stick around, let's get to it. So this is all of the stuff basically arrayed here that I want to show you. The first thing you need to do when you're doing any of this sort of work is to get yourself one of these things. So this is a sort of, wire pipe power detector thing. So what you do with this, very important, you put battery in, just a 9-volt battery like that. And you use it basically to find where pipes are. So you set it up appropriately for the relevant thing. So for metal, for this case, and then basically you just you put it up against the wall and you sort of scan around just to make sure that where you're drilling there aren't any pipes or cables or anything running behind. So that allows you. So what I did basically here was I just ran along like this to make sure that there weren't any cables or pipes. Obviously there's going to be some pipes somewhere behind here, but thankfully I was lucky that this one there were no pipes behind this part of the wall, which meant I was able to drill through, which I was very relieved about. So once you've located the right place for you to drill through, you need to then obviously drill through the tiles or the grout. Now what I did was I picked up some special what are these? These are sort of special tile drill bits, and these are much better at drilling through tile than like a regular drill bit, because obviously tiles are extremely hard. Now you can see actually this, so I used this small one here to do the ones for the raw plugs. That's these small ones on either side of the plate here, and then this bigger one here was for the main cable through the center there. And what you do when you're drilling through tiles is you put a bit of tape on the wall like this, and you mark where you want to drill, and obviously then that means that when you put your drill bit up, obviously attached to a drill, it's not going to slip and slide around, which makes it much easier to stay central. And once it's going through, then you're all good and you can keep going. Now these are quite fragile. You can see actually this smaller one, I ended up breaking it. So you know, just be a bit careful with how you do that. Once you're through the surface of the tile, you can then just use a standard masonry bit. But even so, drilling through an actual tile like these ones, these are really solid, and it took me ages to do the one in the second ensuite because I had to drill through the tile itself. So any opportunity I could to drill through the grout instead, I took that opportunity. So hence, you know, this one where I've drilled through the grout in the corner and in along the horizontal there, that made life significantly easier. So yeah, I recommend doing that if you can. The other thing you'll notice is that I've actually looped all of these so that they form this sort of U shape. That's because if you put a wet towel on your towel rail, if you've got your cable above there, you don't want it to drain in, you know, through the wall into your wall there. So by doing this, that means any drips of water that happen to run down here, they'll collect at the bottom and they're never going to find their way through into the wall cavity. So that's worth bearing in mind as well. Now, as far as actually drilling through the wall is concerned, I got myself a very long drill bit. You can see, so this is an 8mm diameter drill bit, a masonry bit, and you can see it's extremely long because basically it needs to go all the way through the wall out the other side. And once you're through, you know, just the first part of the wall here, this can go through no problem, and it just pops out the other side, and it means you're then able to feed the cable through that hole. So this is an 8mm hole here, and I think I did 5mm holes for the two raw plugs. Yeah, it's a case of sort of trying to feed the cable through and aiming for the other side so that it pops out. And I was quite lucky, I managed to get it through every single time without too much trouble. But yeah, if you do have trouble feeding the cable through, just like tape a bit of wire to it and pass the wire through first, and then you can pull it out from the other end and pull the cable through. And that might make life a little bit easier. So I mentioned earlier that the cable that comes with the immersion inserts isn't super long, and in every single case I needed to extend that so that I could plug it into a socket. So what I've done here is I've just got a sort of mock up. This is actually ready to go, waiting for the for me to wire it into the one in the behind our bed, because we haven't got around to doing that one yet. So I thought, well, I'll just keep hold of this and do it for the video. But you can see what I've done here is I've cut a piece of cable. So this is the cable I bought. So it's what is it? So 3-core round flexible cable, 0.75 millimeter squared, 5 meters. So this is rated at 6 amps. So these immersion inserts, they don't run very many amps. So I calculated it's only about 1.5 amps, I think, something like that for the 400 watt insert, which means 6 amps is more than enough. So then I also bought a plug, which again was about 5 or 6 amps, something like that. Wired that into the end of the cable, and also I bought some of these sort of connector boxes. So what I've done here is you can see that what you do is you undo it, you strip these wires and you wire them into each of these little blocks, and making sure that when you wire in the other end of the immersion from the immersion heater, so the immersion heater cable will run through here, and then you've got to just match up the live, neutral and earth in the relevant order, so that that forms a nice, good, strong connection, and that gets covered over like that, and you screw those in, and then that just hides behind the bed, or you know, inside the fitted wardrobes. Nobody will see that, so that's cool. So that's all good and well, but what I would like to show you is the best tool that I have ever bought in my life. Now this thing is a genuine miracle. So this, I saw this actually on some other YouTube videos, and I just bought this in B&Q, you know, it's just there on the shelf. And what this does, it actually strips cables. So let me do a demo, see if I can do this and show you adequately how this works, because honestly this is the best thing in the world, and it will save you so much time and effort if you ever have to do any wire stripping. Right, it's going to be a little bit tricky for me to demonstrate whilst holding the camera, but basically the idea is once you've got your wire pulled back, you put it into the mechanism here, you clamp it down, and then you just pull the handle. Boom, done. And you can see that's just created the perfect stripped wire, and that's all you need to do. It's amazing. So good. So yeah, what I used to do was I had one of these tools that you'd clamp onto it and sort of twist it around and pull it out. But yeah, this thing's super quick. Let me show you again. You just put it in here. I don't even know how this actually works because it's almost impossible to see it working in action. But yeah, just grips it. Boom, done. There you go, easy. And you get the perfect stripped wire. So yeah, I thoroughly recommend getting one of these sorts of things. They're amazing. So we're back in the second bedroom here, and I want to show you the slight complication that this particular setup presented to me, because the cable that obviously comes with the immersion heaters was only about 1 meter long, as I said before, and that meant that where it comes through the wall, it actually comes through, well, about there. You can just about see a little bit of a blemish up there where I drilled through and had to fill the hole because I slightly misjudged the height, but that's another story. It only sort of came to about here, and there's no way that I could have used that big chunky connector box in the same way as I did for the other. Oh, hello, Mr. Spider. So yeah, the other ones I was able to use that big chunky connector box, and because that's just hidden behind underneath the bed or in the wardrobe, but this is never going to fit inside this trunking. So let me just show you. So if I pop this corner piece off, you'll notice that this bit actually is just for show. There's nothing in here. It's just to make it look neat around the corner. But if I pop open this trunking, you can see where the cable pops out through the wall there. And then it runs along to here, and you can see this big mess of electrical tape. It's actually neater in there than it looks on the outside. I just went a bit overboard with the electrical tape. But basically, what's in this big sort of chunky bit here is actually a slightly different way of connecting electrical cable. Now, I'll show you this. This is what I ended up getting as a alternative to that big chunky box. These 1.5mm crimp connector butts. So these are little red tubes basically, and if I show you an individual one, basically there's a little bit of metal in there, and what you do is you pass the two ends of the cable, of each of the 3 wires has one of these on it, and you pass the 2 ends in either side there, and then you crimp them. So here's my trusty wire stripping tool. You basically place it, I'm going to put it on the floor here for ease of demonstration. You basically, once you've got the wire in there, you place it inside there, and you pull the 2 handles together, and it crimps the end. In other words, it just flattens that little bit of metal in there that then grips the end of the wire. And so once you've got that on both ends of the wires for the 2 cables, then you've got a nice good solid connection. And then all I did was then obviously wrap everything up in electrical tape to make sure it's all good and solid. So yeah, that then goes through into the wardrobe in exactly the same way as in our master bedroom, and runs through to the socket again with a smart plug attached to it. So there you go, that's that one. Right, so once you've passed the cable through the wall and you've got it all wired up, you then need to make it look neat on the other side. So what I've done is basically I bought myself a load of these blanking plates, and I've just drilled through the bottom. So these just were very basic blanking plates, but they didn't have any holes where you could pass the cable. So I've drilled this out. You can see I've made a bit of a mess of this one, but actually nobody's going to see that. So this is the one that's going to go on the other side in our bedroom underneath the bed. So you can see nobody's going to see that, but if you have a look underneath, see if I can get this right. You see it's just sufficient to basically flatten the cable against the wall there, and then obviously it bends round and then through the hole in the center. So that's helpful. It just means that it keeps it a bit neater and stops the cable flapping around. I think that looks pretty decent. Even if you slightly mess up the drilling the hole through the bottom, you've got to be a bit careful with doing this. So I clamped this in a clamp and did it that way and did it very carefully. But yeah, most of them I did a better job than this one. So I'm just keeping this one for under the bed because nobody's going to see it. But yeah, that's all you need to do for that. And on to the next bit. Right, so the final step with all of this is to actually fill the towel rails back up with water. So some people suggest using oil, but honestly that seems very messy and annoying to me. If you ever have to refill it, that would be a massive pain. So I just decided to go with water, and water's perfectly fine, honestly. And what you do is you basically just undo the little cap at the top here with a spanner, and you just fill it up. And the idea is to not fill it all the way. So I filled it to about here, I think, something like that, because when you turn it on and heat up the water expands a little bit. So what you want to do is you want it to test it out, heat it up, the water expands, and then you can basically tighten those up so that they're nice and tight and sealed, and then you're good to go. One extra thing you need to do though is to add what's called a inhibitor to the radiator. So I bought this stuff. There's various different types of this, but what you do is you put some of this, the appropriate amount, into each radiator, and it just stops like the build-up of gunge and rust inside the towel rails. So I just bought this off of Amazon, but you can get it in B&Q or any other hardware store. And yeah, you don't need a lot of it. So I got a litre bottle, and this was more than enough for the three towel rails. Yeah, that just helps keep the system from getting all gunged up. So there you go. I hope you found that useful. So I expect there are plenty of DIY experts out there who are screaming at me saying that I've done all sorts of things wrong. But you know what? This seems to be working pretty well, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with the results. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.